This video will help you with the double crochet coaster with edging. Be sure to download the written pattern in the notes below and click on any links in the video to take you to more in-depth instruction for any of the stitches and techniques I use here. I'm using American crochet terminology. Begin with a slip knot on your hook and leaving about a 4 to 5 inch tail to weave in later. Then chain 15. Stop and count. Make sure you have 15. Don't count the loop on your hook, but count all the others. So I'll start down here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. We're going to use markers to help us keep track of the beginning and end of the row. So I'll put a marker in the first chain from the hook, not the loop that's on the hook, but the first chain below that. And we will want to find that when we come back. For row 1, double crochet in the 4th chain from the hook. So I'm skipping that one that I marked. That's 1, 2, 3, and then work into the 4th chain from the hook. Double crochet is yarn over, insert your hook into the chain, and I'm working just above that bottom loop. So when I go in and tilt it around, you can see I have 2 loops on top of my hook. Go into the chain, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2. Because we're counting the turning chain as a stitch, those skipped chains are a stitch, and that's why I put a marker there. So I'll be counting that, and so this is my second stitch. This is my second double crochet, if you will. Then I'll double crochet in each chain all the way across. So working into the next chain, I'll do another double crochet, and I will do that all the way across. Here I am on my last chain. At the end of that row, I want to stop and make sure that I do have 13 double crochets. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, and then 13 is that turning chain. So I'm good with that. Put another marker in that last stitch. So right here in the last stitch. Turn and chain 3. This counts as a double crochet in this example. Because it counts as a double crochet, I want to mark the top of that stitch. So once again, I'm going to put a marker in the first chain from my hook. So now I have 3 markers. I've actually already worked my first double crochet because that chain 3 counts as a stitch. Therefore, that is the double crochet, if you will, that's coming out of this marked stitch, the stitch that's with the marker in it. So I'm going to skip that stitch that's marked with the pink because there's already a stitch in it and I don't want to increase. And I'm going to work into the next stitch. So moving that out of the way, not into the marked stitch, but into the next stitch. Double crochet there. And on this row, I am working under both loops of the stitch in the row below it. So under both loops is our default, and I'm going to do that all the way across to the end of the row. As I'm coming to the end of the row, I see my last real double crochet. You can see that nice V there, but I'm not quite finished because that turning chain counted as a stitch. So I have to work into that turning chain as well, but you see it's not a nice pretty V like all the other ones have been. So because I have a marker here though, that marker is there, can give it a little tug and it helps me see where my hook is going to go. It's going to go under those 2 loops right there in my chain. It's kind of hard to do with the marker in it, so I'm going to move the marker. I'm not going into that space. I'm going into the chain right here. So go into the chain and do my double crochet. Now let's stop and count and make sure I still have 13 stitches. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. Good. I'm good. I'm going to replace the marker and put it in that last stitch. Now, I don't need this pink marker anymore, so I'm going to move that. I could have moved it before because I'll need it again in just a moment. It's time to do the next row. So all the rows after this are just like row 2. I'm going to turn and chain 3. I could chain 3 and turn if I want to. 1, 2, 3. Put a marker so I will be able to find that stitch when I come back to it. And then I know that I'm going to skip this marked stitch because there's already a stitch coming out of it. But let me show you what to do if you're not using a marker here, so you still know where to put the first stitch. Here I've done my chain 3. You can count 1, 2, 3. And then the next stitch you can see is the first double crochet here. But again, this is a stitch. So I don't want to put a stitch here because there's already one there. I'm going to work into the next stitch. So that's how you will see how to do it if you have forgotten to move your markers. At the end of this row, once again, I have a marker here and I can work into that stitch. Not into that space, but into the stitch. Now, what if I have not remembered to put my marker at the top of that chain? I can still do that. Let me back up here and show you what it looks like. Here I am with my last real stitch. My last real double crochet has a nice V there, so I can easily see that. And it's tempting to stop right there, but if I stopped and counted 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. You can see I only have 12 stitches. So I know I need to do another stitch and I need to work it into this chain. And if I kind of turn it around, I can see, yes, it was easy to work there. It's not going to be as easy to work here. And I can either work under 2 loops like this, or I can work just like I did when I was working into a chain before and go under, just over that bottom loop of the chain like that and do my last stitch. Now when I count, I know that I will be maintaining 13 stitches. You might notice you're getting a gap here where you have the chain 3. That's pretty common in double crochet. If you want, you can try using a chain 2 instead to narrow that gap. There are other ways to avoid that gap, but when you're just learning, we're not going to worry about it too much. Let me show you what it will look like if you're doing a chain 2 instead. 1, 2, and again, I'm going to put a marker right there in that top loop or top stitch, not in the loop that's on my hook, but the chain right below it. And I'm still going to count that chain 2 as a stitch now. So again, I would 1, 2, I'm going to skip this stitch because there's already a stitch coming out of it and put my double crochet in the next stitch. And you may find that that helps narrow that little gap right there, and later on you can learn some other ways to avoid that little hole that you get. So go ahead and do some more double crochet rows until your coaster is square. When I've made it square, first I can check and fold it in half diagonally to make sure it is square. I can work the edging. Notice here that I used a chain 3 as the turning chain on these rows and a chain 2 here. So the chain 2 did create less of a gap there. On the end of the last row, I don't fasten off. I'm going to continue working around the edge with single crochet. But in order for it to lie flat, I'm going to have to increase at each corner to make it lie flat. You can see that it's square because I can fold it diagonally and see that the edges match up. Now I'm going to work my edging. I needed to turn at the end of the last row, but I'm not fastening off. So now to start the edging, chain 1, but that's not going to count as a stitch. Then single crochet in the first stitch, so I'm skipping that chain and single crochet into the first stitch. I want to put a marker there so I'll know where that first stitch is. Then single crochet in each stitch across to the last stitch. So this is my single crochet edging. This is my turning chain. In the last stitch, I'll put 3 single crochets. 1, 2, all into that last chain, top of the turning chain, 3. Let me stop and show you what's happening here. You notice that those 3 chains now have curved around the edge, and now I'm going to start working along this selvage edge. Now, ideally, I want to have, because this is square, I want to have the same number of stitches along this side as I do along this side. That would be ideal. The math here may be different for you because you may have a different number of rows. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 rows of double crochet, and I want basically 13 stitches because I had 13 stitches here and I want 13 here, not counting that corner stitch. That's going to be approximately 1 stitch in one row and then 2 in the next, then 1, then 2, then 1, then 2. Yours may be something different because your row gauge on your double crochet might be different. Your double crochet rows might be taller or shorter than mine. So you may have to play around with this a little bit to get your edge flat. But right now I'm going to work just 1 more stitch in this double crochet row end, and I'm working into the double crochet, not around the post of the double crochet. In other words, I don't want to work into a space. I want to work into the stitch. That actually has 2 stitches there because one of them was in the corner. So I'm going to put 1 stitch in the next row end and then 2 stitches in the next row end. And I'm going to do that across, and then I'm going to stop and see whether I'm happy with the way that looks. Sometimes you have to kind of figure out where that hook goes here. That was 2. I'm going to do 1. It's especially hard when you have a turning chain to figure out where it goes, and the best advice I can give you is just let your hook find where it wants to go within those stitches, just as long as you're not working around the post of a stitch. I think that was 2, then 1, and let's see where I am here. Just to prove this to you, I'm going to show you 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. That's my corner stitch. I'm not going to count that. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. I need to do 1 more. 13. And that's going to be my corner, first part of turning the corner. So now I'm going to put 2 more. 1, 2, in that corner stitch. Now I'm working along the foundation chain. Notice that the foundation chain only has 1 loop for me to work into because I worked under 2 loops before. So now I'm just going to be working under 1 loop as I work across the foundation chain. I've worked across the foundation chain. Again, let me count. That's a corner stitch, so I'm not counting that. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Right here I'm at my last stitch, so that is 13. But because this is the corner, I'm at a corner, I want to put 2 more stitches in that same stitch. There's my second one, that's going to be my corner stitch, and then my third one. Now I'm going to work up this selvage edge, and I want the same number of stitches along this edge as I do along this edge. And one thing, let me go back here and talk about this edge that I worked on. I'm happy with this because it's flat across. It's not splaying out or pulling in or waving or anything. It is just being absolutely straight across. And so that tells me that's something I'm happy with. So now I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to work 1, then 2, then 1, then 2 across each row end. I can also, if I want to, work over this yarn tail. Notice this is my beginning yarn tail, and if I want to, I can start to weave it in a little bit as I work. So what I'm going to do is I put my hook into that stitch, I'm just leaving that yarn tail and working over it. So I'm enclosing it in my single crochet. Let me do that again. That was 1 more stitch there. I'm going to put 2 in the next row end. You see how I'm just covering that. Now that's not going to be sufficient. I may do that a couple of stitches like this, but I am still going to want to weave this in. So I'm going to get that out of the way now so it's not being covered up. I'm going to want to use my yarn needle to fix that later on. So that was 1 stitch in the row end, and then here's my next row. This is probably the hardest thing you've done so far. Don't stress over it too much. This will come with practice. I'm not always sure what's going to work, and sometimes I have to rip things out and try again, see if I'm happy with the way it's looking as I go along here. That's all right. I don't like the gaps I'm getting here, but again, that's something we'll work on later on. Let me count how many stitches I have here now. That's my corner stitch. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, oops, 13, 14. That's too many. I have put too many in there, so let me back up. There's no harm in ripping out your work to get it right. So I'm going to back up and not put quite as many stitches there. So let me stop and count here before I finish off the row. There's my corner stitch. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. All right, and I need 1 more and then my corner stitch to make 13. So here's where my first stitch went, and I actually want a total of 3 stitches in this corner. So 1, that would be my 13th stitch, and then 2, this would be my 14th stitch. So I'm going to stop. Am I happy with that? Yep, I'm pretty happy with the way that looks. Now I can cut my yarn, leaving a tail to weave in later. And I have an option of how to finish this. I can either slip stitch, in other words, insert my hook under that first stitch that I marked, pull it all the way through, and then fasten off. That's the easiest thing to do. Or I can do this. I have not done the slip stitch here. I'm going to cut the yarn and pull the yarn tail through, then thread my yarn needle and work around that last stitch. Put it under the 2 loops of the last stitch and back down where it came out of to make a more seamless looking edge there. Then I'm going to weave in my ends, and I want to weave them in multiple directions. So I'm going to work under stitches here, and then maybe work in this direction, then maybe work in this direction. Remember, I'm going to be using this a lot, and it's probably going to get washed. So I want to make sure that I have woven in these ends a bunch of different ways. Then that yarn tail that I worked under, that I caught up under my stitches, that's still not going to be sufficient. Having caught it under those stitches, it will come out if I'm not, here it is, if I pull too much on it. Watch, see how it moves? So I also want to work it in a couple of directions. If I want to, I can just go back under the stitches in the other direction, or I usually go horizontally or diagonally or something as well. If you'd like more crochet instruction like this, subscribe to my YouTube channel. Check out the links in the video notes for other ways you can find me. Thanks for watching.